Well, if you've been around this channel for long, you know we talk about Epic Universe a lot. We have the construction progress, anything that Universal announces or releases about it. I like to come on here and talk about it because I myself am very excited for this theme park, and I've never seen a brand new theme park open since we've been covering theme parks. But I can admit I'm a bit biased, and I have the ways in which I view it versus other people, so I'm always on the lookout for what other people think about it, good and bad. And I found this video here. It's not a brand new video, but it's by Theme Park Media and talks about Universal destroying the modern theme park ideology in terms of going up against Disney. So I thought this might be a good video to watch and react to and see what they have to say about it. So that's what we're going to do here. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And again, this video is from Theme Park Media. And it says Epic Universe is Universal destroying modern theme park ideology. So let's get to watching.
Oh boy, you sure look lost. I can give you a ride. What do you say, pal?
No thanks, Mickey. I'm gonna go this way.
Hey, no, come back! I have 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, Dole Whip, and we have $60 billion worth of investments planned over the next decade!
Universal just revealed the coolest thing anyone theme parks has done this century. Maybe you've seen it. I apologize it took until this announcement to fully understand the severity of Universal Epic Universe. What's about to become the 4th theme park at the Orlando Resort is throwing the first...
Okay, Universal says, again, I've said this before, Universal says it's the 4th. It's the 3rd theme park. They consider Volcano Bay's water park to be a theme park. It's a very well-themed water park. It's my favorite water park. I do really like it. And I'm not a water park person personally, but I do enjoy Volcano Bay. But that's why they consider this their 4th park. But technically, it's their 3rd theme park, and they have a water park. But that's how Universal classifies it anyways.
First punch in what will become a war between the 2 Orlando Titans. Sure, Universal and Disney have always been rivals, but that was, say, a Cold War, a race between who could out-innovate the other, a battle for who could convince the average vacationer to visit their park over the other. With Epic Universe, that choice becomes a little more clear. The debut of this park will usher in a new age.
You know, I will say, I've been saying for a while, I think Super Nintendo World alone, if Universal was, building that, would be a major problem for Disney because Nintendo is multi-generational. We talked about here, like I grew up with Nintendo. Our kids are into Nintendo now. It has a massive audience and a mass appeal across, multiple generations of people. That's before you even get into the fact of a brand new state-of-the-art theme park. So I think Super Nintendo would be something that I don't think Disney itself even has an answer for that, let alone anything that, Epic Universe as a whole is doing.
The theme park civil war, if you will.
Oh,
and I don't know about you, but it's a show that I will be enjoying front row. But
agreed. I'm looking forward to both of these companies going at each other completely.
This war isn't just about who can build better rides. It's a psychological war. One of those companies uses nostalgia as bait, and the other is flipping that ideology on its head. How? It exposes the greatest Disney World knickknack of all time. The lie they've sold you. Nowadays, the idea of Disney World has since become better than Disney World.
That's a valid point. And if you think about it, that's probably very true, is the idea of it is better than the execution of it in terms of a lot of people, how they remembered it or how the commercials look. It's a really good point.
Inflated prices, budget cut rides, and changes to guest experiences. The Western world is losing its sense of value for what a theme park really is. But don't worry, instead mark your calendars, because come summer 2025, we're reminded of what a good theme park is. It's the first time in a while anyone, whether that be a Florida resident, tourist, or even Disney Vacation Club member, sees the potential Disney could have had, but chose not to. We get to see the full potential of what the theme park titans will make when held to their high price standard, forcing them to put their money where their mouth is. Today we're exploring Epic Universe and the real reason it exists. Sure, building a new park will introduce new experiences, increase resort capacity, and ultimately drive up the revenue, but why did they settle for this style of theme park? Spoiler, they're using Disney's strategy to drive out Disney customers who are beginning to see the flaws. Epic Universe is a piece in a calculated game of chess. It isn't checkmate, but it is check. If Universal continues to...
It's a good way to put it. calling it checkmate, and I think a lot of people jump to that, which I get, people are excited, but to say it's checkmate against Disney is not accurate, but could be check, like in terms of chess, in terms of terminology there. That's probably one of the better ways I've heard it being put.
Play this game, they will become the new kingdom of Orlando theme parks. And that is epic, especially when the only epic Disney knows.
You know, I'm not saying that Universal will never get bigger than Disney, and this gets talked about a lot, but they may never be bigger than Disney World. It really depends. Now, it's definitely possible because, you know, people will sort of look at Disney, some of these companies, and think like they're infallible, like they'll never go under. Like if you look at throughout time, you know, there were people that never thought Sears would go out of business, or a lot of these companies that were, you know, Goliaths in their day. Like it can happen to any company if they make enough, you know, bad decisions compounded together. And if you're familiar with like compound interest, that can go good and that can go bad. You know, myself personally, and I think many other people would agree that I think Disney has been compounding bad decisions, but they had such a headwind ahead of them. They had all the things that obviously Walt did, but like what Eisner did in the parks, they're still riding the coattails off of it today. And I think this is why you've seen the slows. It's been this slow one. It's not going to be an immediate thing, but it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Disney could figure out that they've messed up and change course and really concentrate on things that they used to, and save some of that share, you know, market share that they have. But I think if things continue to go this way, you compound more bad decisions. Let's say the next CEO is not a good choice, and just again, it could almost turn into what you had in Disney in the 80s, which was not a good time period for Disney. It's definitely possible. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I just think it is a possibility of happening, and it's not impossible for basically any company to run itself into the ground. I mean, look at Warner Brothers Studios, for instance. Back in the early 2000s, they were on top of the world. They had the Dark Knight trilogy. They had Lord of the Rings. Like they had, you know, Harry Potter. They had hit after hit after hit, and that studio is essentially in massive debt now, and is basically, they're not bankrupt yet, but they are really, really hurting for cash, trying to turn things around. So it can happen to any company. Just because you've had success in one period of time, you know, doesn't mean you're immune to these issues. But Disney had so much of a headwind. I think that it will be a longer process if it were to happen.
Is Epic Games. Yeah, while Universal is dumping billions and billions of Comcast dollars into this new park, Disney is dumping billions into Fortnite. But
it's a good point. And I still don't understand that, putting it into Fortnite. But I mean, I like Fortnite on some level, but I never thought that was a good investment to spend billions more with a stake in Epic Games. But maybe it'll work out for them. I don't know.
Comcast billions have already begun to pay off in a marketing sense. Whether it's blog posts, announcement breakdowns, construction updates, Epic Universe is everywhere, and it has been since announced in 2019. It was always destined to get some sort of attention, being the newest Orlando park in over 25 years. But this isn't a free-roaming backlot or traditional circular park, but is solely themed to taking you off planet Earth and putting you in the fantasy world Celestial Park. Celestial Park becomes an epic universe when you incorporate the 4 entry portals, each leading into a different world. The magic behind this design is you don't have to walk through each land to get where you're going. Instead, the worlds are positioned apart from each other, only accessible by their respective portals. It might not be hovering monorails or gravity-defying flying theaters, but this is the next wave of theme parks unfolding before our very eyes.
I am curious because the way they're doing this park is unique in terms of each lane has an entrance and exit. You're not going to be able to walk into, say, Super Nintendo World and walk over into, you know, Ministry of Magic. You know, how does the flow of the park go? Like, is it still good? Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I just don't know. I've never seen a park really do this. So I am curious in terms of the day-to-day flow. Like, how does that, you know, work, and how do the crowds, you know, go with that?
But Epic Universe is anything but a new idea. Theme parks take years and years of research and development, with first rumors of a third Universal park dating back to 2013, 12 years prior to the park's grand opening in 2025.
Well, if you guys remember, Bob Iger said they knew all about Epic Universe coming. They just didn't do anything about it, apparently, but they knew it was coming for like a decade.
Now, it's easy to go around and praise the design choice and attention to detail of Epic Universe, but the rabbit hole goes much further than that. Disney holds the unofficial title of the go-to resort in Orlando, But Universal has become way hungrier for that title. Truth is, neither really care about a useless title, but they do care about the revenue that comes from who is vacationing where. Disney World, being considered among the greatest vacation destinations in the world, isn't a fair title, when it seems like without Mr. Disney himself to be the leader in innovation and change, all they do nowadays is conform to the game Universal is changing. Walt Disney once said, "We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make movies." If we were to apply that same quote to the theme parks today, it would be, "We don't make rides to make money. We make rides to take money." Or, "We don't make rides to make money. We make money to invest in Fortnite." The original Universal Studios park.
I mean, it just does show you. You hear them all the time when it comes to Iger, and they say, "What would Walt do when we do those things?" Like, it's very obvious that, first off, Walt was a once in a generation type of person. He thought differently than other people, and the idea that anybody in Disney management and leadership is anywhere near Walt's thinking is, in my opinion, just is just preposterous. Like, it's just not something. They're obviously more concerned with showing a profit every quarter. And really, I would say, and I understand why he did it, but probably Walt Disney's biggest mistake was taking the company public, which subjects it to these issues, because he did it at the time because he wanted the money to build the parks and do the things he wanted to do. But doing so when you're a publicly traded company, if you're not showing increased profits every quarter, all of a sudden investors get mad, your stock tanks, and you're just, instead of focusing on what the customer wants or what your fan base wants, you start just looking at the financials. And I think that's exactly where Disney is. It's just, they might hear some stuff here and there if it's a big enough uproar, but what they really care about is the money, and that's really what motivates them on basically everything they do in the company now.
Brought live movie production stages to Orlando. Those stages didn't age very well, now sitting as vacant buildings used for special events and Halloween Horror Nights. But those ugly yellow sound stages is how Universal Orlando found its footing, by attracting those curious to see what goes into making a Universal film. Disney did not like it when the new guy on the block found a niche they hadn't yet tapped into. Fearing Universal would become the film backlot studio of Orlando, Disney made their own backlot park, even going as far as licensing a production studio name, calling it MGM Studios. MGM Studios was met with heavy criticism, many saying there wasn't much to do, and what there wasn't exactly living up to the Disney reputation. Alright, so what? That's gotta be the one time Disney took from Universal, right? If Epic Universe is Universal Orlando's magnum opus, then, in modern years, Galaxy's Edge and Pandora the World of Avatar are the closest to what would be considered Disney worlds. These are incredibly detailed lands that show what Disney is capable of when they get to work, and will always convince me to fork over the $7 for a Night Blossom whenever I'm at Animal Kingdom. But I'm not the only one. These lands are...
I will say, Pandora is a really good land. I don't think it's based off a super strong, necessarily, IP, but it's a good land. I have a lot of issues with Galaxy's Edge. I won't go into them here, but I don't think it's a great Star Wars land whenever you essentially just built the land based on only the sequel trilogy, when you have all these other characters and stories you could tell. But we won't get into that on this video.
Designed to milk the last pennies out of the average visitor through exclusive merch, upsold experiences, and food themed to the area. What sounds like a Disney-made idea is really traced back to Universal gambling on the wizarding world of Harry Potter, aka Disney's most magical mess-up of modern-day media. Author J.K. Rowling first approached Disney to see what they could come up with for a Harry Potter-themed experience at the Magic Kingdom. The first pitch they gave was extremely underdeveloped. After Rowling gave them a list of demands and 3 lackluster revision attempts later, she had enough with Disney. How do you mess that up? I mean, weren't people waiting hours, camping overnight to see the latest release in the Harry Potter series? And it all comes down to not dreaming big enough. But you know who did deliver?
I mean, thank goodness Disney didn't get it. I mean, what I had heard at the time, they were proposing where you've got Ariel and the grotto in that area over there, that's where they were going to put the Wizarding World, and essentially it was just going to be the small part of the park. And I think that was one of the contentions that J.K. Rowling had, was it need to be much more immersive. I think if they would have got it, I think Disney, they wouldn't have done it like Universal did. And this is the first time we really saw Universal really create a super in-depth, like immersive land like they did. And I'm sure he's going to go into it, but like Disney still hasn't answered for the Wizarding World stuff that Universal's, done twice, getting ready to do a third time.
For the vision Rowling approved, Universal. After some suggestions, Universal created the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, a land themed around Hogwarts and Hogsmeade. Now, Rowling must have really wanted that Disney contract because she then went back asking if Disney could compete with Universal's vision for Harry Potter. It was then Disney CEO Bob Iger called the Wizarding World ridiculous and far-fetched. Interesting choice of words.
Also, I think part of it too is J.K. Rowling did want a lot of control, which Disney doesn't like to do. But yeah.
From the guy who would do just that several years later.
We're creating a jaw-dropping new world that represents our largest single-themed land expansion ever.
The slap in the face didn't come from losing the Harry Potter theme park rights. Disney could do just fine without it, but from what Harry Potter did for Universal. What was considered a pit stop if you had extra time in Orlando now became its own destination park. People were starting to vacation to Orlando for Universal. No wonder Disney had to build Star Wars. How else would they compete? I mean, would they have done it without Harry Potter? Maybe, maybe not. It was the opening of an all-inclusive themed land that changed the theme park industry to start charging a premium for these experiences. Universal changed the game, Disney followed the rules. It's an understatement to say Harry Potter worked well for Universal. They then added a second edition over at the neighboring park themed to Diagon Alley. Now with Epic Universe, the trifecta is complete, with the latest edition, the Ministry of Magic. Between MGM Studios...
I'm curious at some level, though, how the Ministry of Magic will do. I mean, it seems like a cool land. I'm not saying it's not being based on Fantastic Beasts, but obviously the ride is based off of the 90s or the original Harry Potter series. But, I mean, it makes sense in terms of Universal is just doubling and tripling down into the thing that has really worked for them. So I suppose if you're in their shoes, you do it until it no longer works or doesn't get as much, appeal or fans don't like it as much. So I understand them doing it. But that one, I do have some questions about how it'll be received in general. And a little time has gone on since, the other Wizarding Worlds were built as well.
Studios and the creation of themed lands around beloved films. This marks the second time Disney changed how they operated because the company down the street, considered worse, was outsmarting them. But how did it come to this? Disney has a simple yet lasting strategy. Play on the heartstrings of visitors, tap into their childhood, let them step into the magic they've been fed their whole lives. Let them ride the movies, sell them character-themed snacks, build a magical brand so spending money somehow seems like not a bad thing.
It's a good point there.
It isn't a coincidence that Disney adults are millennials who grew up throughout the Disney Renaissance, the era when Disney was releasing theatrical hit after hit after hit. Now let's look at Epic Universe.
And really, too, you can only tap in nostalgia for so long before you have to have something that you're creating now to have nostalgia later, if that is your strategy, which I agree with him. I think that is Disney's strategy, is basically tapping into nostalgia. But you can make a really good argument, at least in the past little bit, they haven't been creating new things as much and as frequently to really have that nostalgic value, let's say 10, 20, 30 years down the line, because I don't imagine you're going to be able to have the same level of this stuff as, the millennials grow out of it and the younger generations come in, especially as they're watching more YouTube and other things. So it's a good point in terms of Universal's been building theirs in terms of like their nostalgia or the way that the people view their parks by, bringing in Harry Potter and other experiences and bringing them to life like they want to see, and just really kind of in the midst of growing theirs.
Celestial Park is the central hub, a one-of-a-kind land that isn't shown in theaters or experienced at another park. Celestial Park holds those 4 entry portals I was talking about earlier, the ones that each lead into their own world. Maybe some of these sound familiar. Super Nintendo World, Dark Universe, Harry Potter Ministry of Magic, and How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. It seems each of these lands were carefully picked. They all have their own fandom, each eager to knock down the Epic Universe gate. We see the introduction of video games to Orlando parks, the introduction of a horror land to Orlando parks, another Harry Potter land bringing fans back for a third time to see a different corner of the Wizarding World. And for the longtime Universal fans, we see dragons making a return to the resort. Now, what do all of these have in common? They all use nostalgia as bait. Super Nintendo World isn't only capturing eyes because of its top-to-bottom colors, but it's casting the theme park net to gamers. Nintendo being...
Valid point. Very valid point. Nintendo is very nostalgic, especially for me. and probably my generation as well.
Being a household name in the 90s and early 2000s, then seeing a resurgence in the 2010s. Dark Universe is based off the Universal classic monsters, such as Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein. I'm sure many of you have heard of those titles, with the first movies releasing in the early 1920s, over 100 years before Epic Universe, and 14 years prior to Snow White. Harry Potter is for those who fell in love with that world, whether that be through the books or through the movies. And How to Train Your Dragon is nostalgic for people like myself who were born in the early 2000s. Nostalgia is the same reason Universal Orlando's largest investments as of late were themed to the Jurassic Park spinoff and Harry Potter. But on the other hand of nostalgia is Galaxy's Edge. Something ginormous in scale and funds is divisive because they chose to story it around the newer movies rather than the nostalgic original.
Like I was saying before, yep. Which I think is a massive mistake for this land.
I think if Disney were to make a 5th Disney World park, they would double down on nostalgia. But even if they decided to do that today, Epic Universe would be turning like 10 years old by the time it opens.
Oh,
so if we're talking about the future, what shows Universal reigning champ over Disney? It comes down to Disney and Universal as mega corporations. With so much to manage within these Wall Street titans, theme parks are a subdivision of an enormous portfolio these companies control. Nothing more than a way to sell more to those who already enjoy their movies, whether that be meeting characters or touring film backlots. That way of thinking was flipped upside down in 2020 when the film industry shut down. While Disney and Comcast were struggling to make profits in theaters, with minor delays, the parks remained open, becoming big breadwinners for their parent companies. Even though it seemed all else was failing, considering the circumstances, the park's revenue stayed relatively up. And my gosh, did these two process that data differently. While Disney was mindlessly fiddling around with reservations and park restrictions, Universal was quick to rebrand from Universal Parks and Resorts to Universal Destinations and Experiences. What sounds like a funny name change was Universal restructuring their theme park department after realizing their theme park potential, and overall, just how big they become in global tourism. Since the
really, Universal got their footing after Comcast purchased them. I mean, for the longest time, they went through different ownership. They had to sell off. I think where Epic Universe is being built, they originally had actually owned that land before. They had to repurchase it back because they had to sell it for money back in the day. So Comcast coming in, giving them stability and giving them funds to do the things they wanted to do was about a decade ago. And again, theme park stuff takes a long time. Like we said, Disney was built up, kind of over time. And if they're going to come down, it's going to happen over time. It's not going to be overnight. Same thing with Universal as they're coming up and Disney's just now starting to notice, oh man, that's a big thing. They can't react quick enough to really do much about it in the short term, which, raises a very good point there. And also during, the period of time where, Disney had park reservations, which they still do if you're an AP, by the way. They still have that system, but just not for day tickets. Plus, they were very restrictive in terms of how they treated guests when it came to masks and everything like that, whereas Universal is much more relaxed. And I think that they won over a lot of people because they were able to just go. It's a simpler vacation, and they could just enjoy themselves. And not only is Universal being more innovative in many ways, but they're also just a more relaxed theme park experience, which I think a lot of people, when they go there, end up really enjoying and kind of realizing how much Disney forces you to be on your phone, to plan everything, to do everything, and people just want to go and enjoy themselves. And you can do that at Universal still. It's not as complicated as Disney is.
Brand, we've seen an emphasis on expansion, with the kids park expanding the Universal name to Texas, year-round haunt event in Vegas, and an entire new resort making its home in Great Britain. Epic Universe is the type of investment we expect from companies with the resources like Disney and Universal. Though Universal did their rebrand, Disney isn't by any means incompetent. While Universal pushes for grand expansions to see that huge return on investment, just look at Epic Universe, Disney goes the route of a dollar saved is a dollar earned. For a company bragging about having the greatest team and leading the industry in innovation, why does Disney World seem to only get reused tech and other parks hand-me-downs? Don't be mistaken, Disney is innovating, but not in America. and that's for a reason. Americans are lazy when it comes to being impressed. If anything, eager to pay the expensive entry fees to escape reality. Travelers to the most expensive place on Earth are happy paying the extra change for what is obviously a budget cut for anyone who's been to any other Disney resort. Only at Disney World will they save a buck on animatronics by projecting an animated face. You know what would happen if they did that very same thing at Shanghai Disneyland? Nobody would go. The entertainment market there is so competitive that Disney needs to innovate if they want to build
and this is why competition is a good thing with Universal. Is he's not wrong in terms of the company. Like Disney as a company has, it's a lot of people talk about this, but Disney World makes all the money, but Disney is based out of California, and they treat Disney World sort of just, they give it second thoughts. They don't really put a lot of thought into it necessarily, but Universal is forcing them to change this, and really with competition and for your vacation dollars, that is going to force them to up their game. But the problem with Disney as well is they don't have the Imagineering team that they used to. So they not only do they need to add things to the parks, but they almost need to, I guess you could say, regroup as a corporation, bringing in talent and people that used to do things well. They lost they let go and got rid of a lot of people, a lot of longtime Imagineers during COVID. And I think you're seeing the repercussions of that with the latest things that Disney has done and not being received super well. If you've ever seen Communicore Hall at Epcot, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Experiences that capture the market's attention. Those resorts are located near cities with a diverse market to pull from, but if Disney is to survive, they need to push the boundaries. Why don't they do that same thing at Disney World, their most profitable resort? Because they don't need to. If people will
yet. I think they might be starting to realize they need to, but for the longest time, they didn't feel like they needed to.
Come because of the fancy Disney name, it's cheaper to copy and paste to save that good old Disney dollar. And yes, as long as they sell you the idea, it's impressive. Prices will continue to rise. Don't get me wrong, Disney has done impressive things, but I just can't tell you they live up to the modern day status quo when they have a team of eager creatives held back by budget cuts and higher ups. Universal, however, gives their incredible team of creatives the freedom to dream big, and Epic Universe is a living representation of what you get when you let those driven minds do what they do best.
Not to mention, a lot of the people that are on Universal Creative came from Disney Imagineering as well. You have a lot of ex-Imagineers that are over there doing things now, and I agree with what he's saying there, though.
Universal as well owns several resorts over in Asia. In the same manner as Disney, they need to innovate or else potential customers won't be interested in spending the money for a ticket. Unlike Disney, Universal brings how they operate over in Asia to America. They have spared no expense at the Orlando resort and have seen that deserved return on investment. By continuing to expand with these experiences, Universal isn't further competing with Disney, but instead putting themselves in their own bracket within the Orlando corner of the theme park industry. So, to recap what we went over. 1. Nostalgic experiences. 2. Pushing the envelope with themed lands. And 3. Escaping reality. This is the ideology of theme parks we've come to consume. That is the importance of Epic Universe, a place themed to taking you off the planet, giving you a portal to walk into long-beloved films, games, franchises brought to life. It will be enough to turn heads and change minds. Now, the big question is, will Disney build a 5th park to combat Epic Universe? Well, they've never shown a sign of building one without competition, so if they do, well, if they need another company to be successful to let their own team get creative freedom, then you don't need for me to say who's leading this race. Seems Disney has become so content with their status, they began to cut corners thinking nobody would notice. But Universal noticed. And now, with Epic Universe as their secret weapon, everyone else will know it too.
It's a good video. I agree with most of his points there, and he brings up very valid points. And something I've also been saying for a long time is Disney has been reacting to Universal for a very long time. A lot of people assume that it's not the case, but if you look at ever since, especially the Wizarding World started popping up on the scene, Disney has tried to basically counter it with, you've got Galaxy's Edge, Pandora, Toy Story Land, and all these things. And some have been met with, I would say, mixed reviews on best, but I don't think any of them are even remotely close to the immersion that you get with the Wizarding World, Hogsmeade, and Diagon Alley. So I agree with that completely. I think he also hits pretty much hits the nail on the head about Disney's creativity. And I guess, to be fair to them, it could still be there. Again, there's a lot of Imagineers that have left to go to Universal, and a lot of Imagineers, quote, retired. And a lot of the stuff you're seeing come out of Imagineering looks to me, if I were to guess, as being designed by firms in California and being sort of ported over to Florida. Again, if you look at Communicore Hall, Communicore Plaza there, it looks like a lot of that was designed at a place that doesn't have blistering sun like Florida does, in terms of you have a concert area or an outdoor venue area that doesn't have shade. So if you're there in the middle of the afternoon, you're just baking in the sun. And, they've had some hits. Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind is a great roller coaster. But, in terms of what they used to do, I agree with them. A lot of it is stuff that's ported over from overseas. You got Tron, you got Remy's, but even Frozen Ever After is a replacement of an older ride that was in Epcot there. So a lot of stuff Disney likes to do is just take an older ride and flip it and then turn it into something new. But they're not in terms of, like, it doesn't increase your capacity necessarily, because you're just replacing one ride with another. And I do think Disney's lacking on the creativity side, but being pushed by Universal, it's not something they're used to. And this is why I think one reason, on top of being just a giant corporation, that I think they've lost their focus in terms of the guest experience and the little things that they used to do really well that really made them stand out. They got pretty complacent. And they're not really used to being pushed. So while they may have now started to realize, we have a lot of competition from Universal, obviously they are going even more aggressive off the success they've had the past 10 years. Disney answering to that is not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to be a longer-term play. And so the things that they announce at, say, D23, we'll have to wait and see how those go over. I have some questions about where some of it's going, what is going in some of these places. I think Villains Land is the most, one has the most potential to be successful. But the other thing I would also point out is, obviously, Universal is being very aggressive with Epic Universe and innovating and all these things they're doing, but they're also going to be adding things into their existing parks as well. There's lots of rumors about Pokemon going in where the Simpsons are. There is the rumors, which I can speak to some degree, but I can't say too much, is Zelda is being looked at going into Islands of Adventure side. And then you have the expansion areas inside Epic Universe. So by the time Disney gets a lot of the things done that they've announced they're going to do, Universal could very well just already be building their next phase of the things they're doing after Epic Universe, because, like I've said many times, Epic Universe is not where Universal is going to stop. They're not going to build that and say, woo, take some time off. Good job, guys. They're going to continue to keep going and innovate because they have the momentum. I think they understand the moment in time they're in. They have a very good opportunity right now. And I think it would be kind of foolish to sit back and allow Disney time to, whatever impact Epic Universe has, for Disney to come out with whatever they're going to come out with that you then have to answer for, versus Universal can build quicker. They seem more innovative. They keep adding things into their park. So by the time Disney has the answer for what they think, quote, is the answer for Epic Universe, they could then have to go right back to the drawing board for more things to answer what Universal is doing. And I kind of think that's where we're at right now. And I think ultimately, if you're a fan of theme parks, you don't have to choose Disney over Universal, vice versa. In my world, I like competition. I want Universal and Disney to go at each other to bring the best out of each other. And competition does that. Disney became complacent because they didn't have much of a competition. But now that Universal is, they're being forced to react to it. And again, we don't know the massive impact that Epic Universe will have yet. I think it's going to be a pretty big one. But we'll have to wait and see in terms of how it is and the longevity of it. I think we can all assume it's going to be very good. And, Disney has some questions about even stuff that they built. Tiana's Bayou Adventure is basically kind of a mess. It's not been reliable. It's had some issues there. It's been met with some people love it. A lot of people don't like what it replaced. So even the things that Disney is doing that are new aren't guaranteed to be running, fantastically or great or be received very well. Again, they've had some good ones. Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, is the best newer ride that they've come out with. But you also have a lot of questions with Disney in terms of the ride maintenance and the cutting back on things in the parks while also increasing prices. So I think ultimately, this was a good video. Go check it out from Theme Park Media. I will link it in the description. I thought it was very well done. It raised some really good points, and I do agree that the innovation that Universal is showing, I love to see. And I really do hope that Disney also gets much more innovative, and they, perhaps stop with the overcharging of things and realize that they're not going to just be able to charge more and more in perpetuity and people just pay it and keep going. Because again, I think with Universal stepping up, and while not being, a half price, destination. They do have areas in which you can save a lot of money, especially on the annual pass side, and their hotels are cheaper. But Universal is still a premium destination, but they're also offering a lot of value. And by itself being an annual pass holder to Universal, I feel like they really do value their pass holders. They look for feedback, and they really are trying to provide a great guest experience. And Mark Woodbury, who is essentially the head of the Universal Parks, comes from the creative side. And anytime they talk, they just really talk about the guest experience, what they're trying to provide, what the guest wants. And I think if they focus on that and they keep focusing on that, that they will continue to be successful in the long term. And I think Disney needs to get back to that in terms of thinking about what the guest wants, being more innovative, and not just, playing it safe or just getting in this mode of answering to Epic Universe. It would be a cool thing, I think, for all theme park fans if Disney gets to the point where they kind of start being innovative as well, which forces Universal to also maybe say, oh, they did that, let's try that as well. So I think that's a good thing if they're both being innovative. They're both really trying their best to really earn your vacation dollars. And ultimately, we end up with great theme parks. But as of now, very excited for Epic Universe in terms of how that park's going to be. I'm curious how Disney is going to really answer for this in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how that's going to play out. But as for now, I like the video. Go check it out, and theme park media there, and I thought it was well done. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel as we do all this coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about this? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.